was a gun.
I'm not voting.
If we want to build our nation.
The problem with the Somalians.
Just want to experience something else than a black man.
Move on, move
Can't be like
forward.
a horse with blinkers on.
Honestly say, I was about to have
Corrupt
sex and then I pulled
crap,
up.
but it's nice.
Hi, I'm Avon. I'm born and bred Cape Town and was homeless, but I'm homeless no more.
Hi, I'm Nathan, South African born, raised in Cape Town, ex-drug addict and now entrepreneur.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ian. I'm the social worker at the Hope Exchange, and we provide services for people living on the streets as well as for young men at risk of homelessness.
Hi, my name is Khotso. I'm born and bred in Joburg, and now I'm in Cape Town and currently full-time employed.
Every day I get to see many homeless people that come to make use of our services, as well as get applications from people for accommodation. And it really is the face of homelessness, and you guys have experienced it in your own lives. And you know, for me it's a very devastating and can be quite a heavy burden to bear, trying to survive each and every day on the streets. First of all, looking for food. Second of all, looking for a safe place to stay. And somehow or another, people still manage to keep going each and every day.
My experience was, well, I came to Cape Town and came to look for work. Basically, wasn't particularly work that I was looking for, was a music career, and which actually started off well, and suddenly I managed to find work, and however, I found work whilst I didn't have accommodation at the same time. So I had to juggle between work and not having a place to stay. And that was a bit of a challenge, and it ended up making me look for actually alternatives that would actually help in terms of shelter, in terms of rest, and then I'll be able to work properly and be more healthier, because I wasn't at all healthy during that work period.
Well, for me, it was actually a period almost of 12 years, actually, from the first time that I actually, my very early years, I was exposed to just the normal, smoking dacha, that kind of thing. And then, of course, after a while, I stopped that and became quite involved with my physical appearance. And believe it or not, it might not look like that today, but I had a six-pack. And then, of course, when the failure of my first marriage, of course, then I was just plunged into hard drugs, and that lasted for about 12 years. At the end of that 12-year period, I found myself on the street. It was a gradual sort of downward spiral until eventually one day I was just out on the street, and I sort of in my naivety thought that this is going to last 6 months. I never thought it would actually last 8 years. 8 years I found myself on the street. And then when that awakening came for me, it wasn't something that just happened overnight. It was an event that took place in my life, something that really sort of shook me to my senses. And then it took almost another 3 years before it was that gradual process, of course, of moving out of that very dark place that I was in.
Well, it kind of happened when my old man passed on. He was kind of the rock for the whole family. My mom had her own way of earning a living, but my dad supplied us with everything. And he didn't have a good job or anything. He just really knew how to work with his money. He was incredibly good. And when he passed on, I got other siblings, 2 older brothers up in Joburg, and there was sibling rivalry, and it kind of, it didn't end well, basically. We all went up to Joburg, and basically the house that my dad had worked so hard to pay off, we sold up and went up to Joburg due to the promise of the siblings to my mom. And it didn't work out, so my mom and I came back to Cape Town, and I had to leave everything behind to go to Joburg, and I came back to Cape Town with nothing, starting all over again. And I found it very hard. Yeah, incredibly hard to.
Were you ever drawn or enticed into living sort of a grey area where you were hustling maybe a little bit illegally in order to get by?
When I was on the streets, I was like really dark. It was like shoplifting, in and out of Baltimore, stuff like that. I mean, stuff I do not ever want to go back to. It was dark. And now that I've accepted Lord into my life, a lot of light. It helps me constantly, daily, and I see a lot of positive. Yes, I do struggle with the darkness and what I've done and stuff, but yeah, I've got to look forward.
You know, my dark moment, I'd probably been out for I think 3 or 4 nights of binging, you know, and every time, of course, when I had money, I'd promise myself, you know, I'd even pray to God and say, Lord, if I'm going to get this money now, there's no way I'm going to do drugs. And the minute I had the money in my hand, I'd be back doing what I was doing. And I think it was like after 3 or 4 days, and I had spent, well, you know, being on the street, if you got 300 or 400 rand, it's a lot of money. So spent that money, and there I was high, I was hungry. My blood pressure was sky high, you know. I was so emotionally, physically, spiritually, just, you know, completely broken. And I remember that was the day when I just really, it was at a station called Falls Bay out in the Muizenberg on the southern suburbs, and I was sitting at the station. I said, no, man, this is not for me, man. I remember I prayed a prayer. I was saying, Lord, you know what, I know this is not the plan that you have for me. Things have got to change. Yeah. That was my darkest moment. That was when I really realized that this was way bigger than me, and I was not in a position to help myself.
I moved to Khayelitsha for some odd reason, decided to go to Khayelitsha and stay. Well, I was tempted to stay with someone, but so I stayed there for a few weeks, and I got everything was stolen, the passport, ID document, a laptop, and was housebreaking. And that in its own was pretty messed up, because it tends to delay your own progression. Like I said, I came here for music, and about 3 gigabytes of my work was completely gone. All the documents, including the matric. I don't know what to do with that stuff though, but everything was disappeared.
You don't know what they're going to do with it, but at the same time, it sets you back quite a lot. I mean, to replace those kinds of things is a huge financial effort.
And at the same time, you're unemployed. And you still have to go and print out the matric certificate. You still have to print out, do an ID, and you don't have...
Yeah.
So that was one of the experiences in the dark that I found very interesting.
One of the things that I've also noticed, which makes it also particularly difficult for people to get off the streets, is if their ID document or their qualification or their bank account is gone, how then is that a problem in order to secure employment accommodation?
Yeah. You know, when I was in Muizenberg, one of the place that there was a place in Muizenberg where we used to go every morning, very much similar to Hope Exchange now. But they provided lockers for all of us, you know, so we had this locker system where you could actually have your stuff. So you went, did your ablution, and then you could actually, you know, wash your clothing, and you could put your stuff away. And so weekends you'd pack all your valuable stuff away, and you'll just take with you what you needed. So there was never that threat of having your documents, and because it was safe, and it was in a very safe and secure place, you know, and that was a big plus for that place, you know. I think there are very few places that provide that kind of support.
Fortunately, I still had my mother with me, so my mom kept most of the things. She's passed away now, so basically got all the stuff with me. But point of saying is, I fortunately had my mother's, but she was staying in like a communique, so it's like a old age kind of setup.
It feels that it's actually quite a long way once you land on the streets to actually being able to become employed again and to start to think about finding stable accommodation. Am I right in that kind of
Well,
perception?
that's exactly what I was thinking, Ian. Like, it's incredibly difficult. It can happen in a moment, and you're on the street, and it's so incredible. I found, personally, I was on the street for 4.5 years. I come from a really good family. My mom and dad gave me everything I ever wanted, and just like that, I was on the street. And like I found it so, I did everything I could. Like, I was washing at the beach every day, trying to get back on my feet, and I found it so incredibly hard to get back into the swing of things. And it's all thanks to organizations like the Hope Exchange and places where I came through to where I am now. And
I like to say that the biggest challenge here in the Western Cape at the moment, I think that, when you have a virus, you have some kind of disease, you want to stop it, but you want to also see, is it going to, show its ugly face again. And I think that in the Western Cape, if I talk about the Western Cape at the moment, there certainly needs to look at, are we churning out more people on the street? We seem to be in this whole sort of vortex where there seems to be no hope.
Yes, and I think the question you're asking also is around what kind of a safety net is there from preventing people from becoming homeless?
Correct.
The whole low-cost housing, I think you mentioned it, and it's close to zero. There is programs that are happening in the townships and I don't know, somewhere that side. I don't know. I'm not very familiar about the areas there, but there is low-cost housing. However, there's also a fact that they say you need families, you need to have kids, you need to have a wife or a partner or something, but they're not.
So all of these things come with a bit of criteria. In other words, the doors are not entirely just open for people to walk through and to access a service. And if you wanted to access services, what are the kinds of obstacles that stood in your way in terms of when you turned to an organization or a person and said, I'm a person in need? What were the kind of obstacles that stood in your way of accessing those services?
I think one of the biggest obstacles is denial. There's a saying that denial is not a river in Egypt. So, getting over that is actually saying, I've got a problem. If you whatever the problem, it doesn't necessarily have to be drug related or alcohol related, but if you're finding yourself in that situation, you need to be quite honest with yourself and say, I need to get out of the situation and I can't handle this, so it's bigger than me. I'm going to need help. And I think that's the first step. If you can actually do that, that's the first step. It's the first step in any of the programs that you go to when you're dealing with alcoholism or when you're dealing with drug addiction or whatever other addiction there may be, is that overcoming that denial to say, I can't handle this thing, it's bigger than me.
personally, it started with me believing in myself, believing that I never knew, well, what was out there, I was kind of, say, ignorant to it. I thought it wasn't accessible for a person like me, that I had to have funding to access such things. And to this day, now that I look back, I think to myself, it's too good to be true. How the things that I thought were inaccessible to people are so easily accessible. I mean, it's just about getting out there and asking, and self-pride.
Yeah.
Putting your pride in your pocket and asking, and bottom line, basically, and believing in yourself.
My personal dream is that through my tour guiding venture, which is called Behind the Scenes, by the way, City Walk Adventure, and my poetry writing, which is published, and my writing to leave a legacy that change is possible.
My personal dream is to one day own my own company and support myself successfully.
My personal dream is to make sure that the music that I create creates a bond and creates relationships that are fruitful and that will last a lifetime.
My dream is to continue working at the Hope Exchange and to make as much of a difference in the lives of people wanting to bring about change as possible.